I'm doing a progress report on updating the legacy app for inventory management. I haven't coded in a while because I was in the process of moving to Netherlands. So last commit was 19 days ago. Today, 12th of December, I got the chance to do a little more work. So first of all, uh, an important update was to switch from PHP 7.4 to PHP 8, and this came with some deprecations and things that made the program no longer work. So let's take them historically. First of all, the Autoload that I was using for loading the models no longer works in PHP works, so I had to use the SPL Autoload register. This was a pretty simple modification since I already had the function Autoload called. I just wrapped that function as a closure and called the SPL Autoload register function with it, so everything worked as the same. Most of the modern applications have auto-loading built in with Composer, so that would be a further on the line refactorization. But for now, I just simply use the initial function and pass it as a parameter. One tedious change I had to make was all the classes in the Ajax package had deprecated constructor. So in earlier versions, you could have used the class name as the constructor name that no longer works, and it was pretty unintuitive what was happening because classes were actually instantiated, at least the one that didn't have any parameters to pass, but the program would simply not work. So I call this tedious because I had to go through each class and modify the constructor name. NewSwap is a third-party library. It's also pretty old. So for this one, initially I tried to change some warnings I had, like this argument was required, although it was at the end after two optional parameters. So I started by making it also optional, and the call to some global config files I had to also check if it said before. In the end, I saw even more errors on this third party, so I googled a bit and changed the class altogether. So someone updated to a new version, and I could use that script file altogether to that works with PHP 8 and 7. So here we can see a lot of changes. Some are formatting, but the class generally got rewritten, and the surprise it was that it kept working. And furthermore, I did some more checking to see if keys are defined and use them appropriately. If are undefined, initialize them. So, for example, here I was concatenating on this attribute, on this key of the array, without checking it if it's defined or not before, and this was throwing a notice exception. Also found some session start calls that were duplicated and were causing. So for now, let's see the progress. I can log in. The products are loading fine. Most of the items in the configuring part of the application work fine. You can edit them. You can add items. Same for categories, product categories, products. Even mapping the products with the inventory sources works fine. Measuring units, VAT, VAT tariffs. Managing agents and mapping the third parties with categories. So this part is almost covered. In parallel, I also started an even bigger refactoring. So as you can see, most of the models and classes are written in Romanian. So naming at that time was a poor choice. The language was a poor choice. And I would call this an even complex refactoring, because naming it's a hard problem to tackle in software development. So this would be a thing on the long run. I already started to list all the tables and the views in the database. Notice that there are more than 100 tables and views, and to this you would add function calls. So the database is pretty massive if we look at it. Besides the views and tables, you would add function calls, store procedures, and any table column is also in Romanian. So this will be a big refactoring. So for this part, I'll go through the process of finding meaningful names and plan it on a longer term. And probably it will go with a total rewrite of the application, since I want to separate the data layer in an API and the front end in a more modern technology. So this is the progress report on December 12th. Looking forward for the next session.